Hey everyone, I'm back today with another What If. And this one is the final part of an unofficial sort of mini-series, I guess, where I went over what might have happened if each of the Dragonets of Destiny had grown up in their place of origin instead of in the caves. Having covered everyone but Starflight, I think it's high time I include him, and figured out what might have happened if Starflight grew up on the volcano. Specifically, this scenario includes Marosir accepting Fierce Teeth's proposal to give her to the Talons of Peace late, claiming that she was the Wings of Night. Real quick before we start, this is the last day of my sale to celebrate 60K in my store. I sell lots of cool Wings of Fire merch like pins, prints, playing cards, bookmarks, and stickers. So if you're interested in cool merch and supporting me, which is a great combo in my head, check out the link in the description and go take advantage of your last day to enjoy 20% off. When Starflight hatched, his father Mastermind was overjoyed. Now that he had a Dragonet of his own, he enjoyed a new kind of status within their tribe, and he was able to train his son to help with his experiments as well. Starflight from a young age showed an aptitude for and love of science, and he was a great help in Mastermind's laboratory. He was perhaps a little too curious for his own good, forever asking about the continent, other tribes, why the Nightwings never left the volcano, and an endless fountain of questions about their traditions. But Mastermind was quite sure he could mold that curiosity over time, ensuring his Dragonet would only ask the right questions. Questions that would serve their tribe well. Starflight himself knew what some of his elders thought of him. Marosir, in particular, never seemed pleased with him, and he once overheard the big Nightwing tell another dragon that he'd made the right choice picking Fierce Teeth instead of him, whatever that meant. Fierce Teeth was his half-sister, and the most annoying, horrible dragon on the island. Probably in the entire world. She was mean and constantly convinced of her own superiority, which Starflight would ignore, except she really was superior, at least according to everyone else. She'd been chosen to be the Wings of Night in the prophecy that would save their tribe, even though Starflight had suspected he'd been hatched much closer to the special day. But Fierce Teeth was everyone's favorite because she was vicious and a leader and clever in a very Nightwing, follow orders perfectly sort of way. All that to say, in a year, Fierce Teeth would get to do what Starflight had always wanted more than anything in the entire world. She would be flying to the continent with Marosir to join the Dragonets of Destiny on their 4th hatching day. And Starflight would still be in the laboratory with his father, doing things that, more and more, made his scales itch. Starflight knew nobody was allowed to go to the continent. What he didn't know was why. Everyone was so hungry all the time, and the volcano was so dark and miserable. Only Marosir and the dragons who went to the rainforest got to experience anything different, and certainly no one would let Starflight go to the rainforest. Well, there was one other dragon who got to go to the continent. Deathbringer, Starflight's best friend, had been traveling the continent for 4 years, since he was only 2, and during his infrequent visits home, he always told Starflight all about everything he'd seen there. Starflight was always starved for new information, about anything. The plants, the food, the sky, the dragons, the war, the animals, the weather, anything. Deathbringer got to see everything out there, and even if Starflight wasn't allowed to go, not for lack of asking, Deathbringer at least made sure to tell him all about it. Deathbringer snuck him scrolls, though, and every now and again a treat from the continent. The roasted frogs he'd brought from the Mud Kingdom had been the first frogs Starflight had seen in real life, and also delicious. But still, Starflight longed to leave the island and see the wonders of the world for himself, even if it was a world torn by war. He knew the war was supposed to help their tribe somehow, distract the other tribes from the rainforest or something, but Starflight wasn't sure what they were planning to do was right. Couldn't they help end the war and then ask for some territory in return? Maybe if they promised to pick one of the sisters as queen, she would share the desert with them. Marosir didn't appreciate that suggestion. Eventually the time came for Fierce Teeth to leave. Deathbringer was gone again on one of his unexplained trips, and Starflight was no closer to convincing anyone to allow him to visit the continent. At least he tried to console himself he wouldn't have to put up with his annoying half-sister anymore. So he tried to distract himself, working with his father, arguing with his father about their work, getting banished to do horrible chores when he annoyed his father too much. Deathbringer was gone for a very long time this trip. Starflight spent a lot of time with Fatespeaker, another friend of his. She was nice at least, even if she could be kind of silly. She would have made a much better sister than Fierce Teeth. Over the next 2 years, he saw Deathbringer 7 times, and didn't see Fierce Teeth once. Marosir had taken to growling menacingly whenever he caught sight of Starflight, so Starflight in turn had taken to avoiding Marosir. The older dragon could be frighteningly mean at times. And then Marosir left, with Deathbringer for once. Starflight's friend had been home for a rare break when the bigger Nightwing had barged in bearing important news, and the two of them had quickly disappeared. Curiosity ate at Starflight, but his questions were to remain unanswered for days. Until the day Marosir and Deathbringer returned. And they hadn't returned alone. They came back with the 5 Dragonets of Destiny, including his horrible half-sister, and Starflight could tell the Prophecy Dragonets were not happy about it. Marosir and several guards had dragged the unconscious body of a Rainwing down to the cells where the other Rainwings were kept as soon as they returned. A dozen other Nightwings pushed at the Seawing, Sandwing, and Mudwing until they were forced into a cave of their own. Fierce Teeth sat and watched next to Deathbringer, whose gaze, curiously, followed the unconscious Rainwing with what looked like guilt in his eyes. Starflight nearly rocketed out to ask 1,000 questions, Marosir and Fierce Teeth notwithstanding, but luckily Fatespeaker was there to remind him that they were technically spying, and that he would be in very much trouble if he got caught. She managed to wrestle him to the ground in time to watch Marosir returning. "Very good," Starflight heard him say in his dour voice. "Deathbringer, you managed not to fail for once. Begone. Fierce Teeth, you did a wonderful job." "Ugh, yuck," Starflight thought, rolling his eyes and gagging with Fatespeaker about Marosir and his prize pupil. Deathbringer was slinking off, though, so Starflight and Fatespeaker quietly snuck away to find him. They caught up to Deathbringer a few minutes later, and it only took 27 minutes to badger him into telling them everything about his latest mission. Apparently things with the Dragonets of Destiny had not been going to plan. Namely, none of them liked Fierce Teeth, shocker, so they were ignoring her and running around to all the other tribes causing trouble. When they went to the rainforest, though, the Rainwing, who they apparently had instead of a Skywing, had almost found out about the Nightwing's plan. Fierce Teeth had also apparently been reporting to Marosir since the Dragonets escaped, so she warned him about the Rainwing, Glory, and she helped draw the Dragonets into an ambush. Now, Glory was captured so she couldn't cause any problems, and Marosir was planning to use her to force the Dragonets of Destiny to do what he told them, namely choosing Blister as the next Sandwing Queen. Deathbringer had helped track and capture the Dragonets. He'd been the one to knock Glory unconscious. For the first time, Starflight truly wondered what it was his friend did for Marosir on the continent. He wondered if Deathbringer liked his job, if he thought it was worth it to see the continent, even though he had to do whatever Marosir told him. Days passed. Fierce Teeth split her time between the captured Dragonets of Destiny and her tribe, basking in the praise and lording it over her counterparts, Starflight was sure. Deathbringer sulked in back passages and tried to sneak into the Rainwing prison without success. Starflight didn't think Marosir knew about that yet, and he hoped he never found out, because he didn't want to know what the huge black dragon would do to Deathbringer if he caught him thinking such disloyal thoughts. Disloyal thoughts weren't the end of it either. One night, 3 weeks after the arrival of the Dragonets of Destiny, and without any progress on Marosir's end, Deathbringer came to find Starflight and ask him for help. He'd finally managed to sneak into the prisons to see Glory. He'd snuck into another cave and managed to convince a younger Rainwing named Kinkajou to show him how to fly into her cave from the back. According to him, she was doing poorly but obviously furious about being betrayed. But Deathbringer told Starflight that he was worried for her and that he was sure Marosir intended to kill her. She was too clever and too unwilling to back down from this. He would kill her or she would kill him, and right now Marosir had all the power over her. Then, Deathbringer got to the treason part. He wanted to help Glory escape, and help the Dragonets of Destiny as well. He didn't care as much about them. Marosir needed them alive, so they were probably safe, but Glory wouldn't leave without them. Only the hard part was, Deathbringer couldn't do it by himself. As soon as one escaped, the guards for the other would go on high alert. Glory needed to escape at the same time as the Dragonets, or they'd have no chance of escaping. Deathbringer promised Starflight that if he helped him free Glory and her friends, they'd all escape together to the continent, where Deathbringer had experience and connections who could help them hide, even from Marosir. It was a big idea, and one that scared Starflight. But he thought back to his earlier musings. about Deathbringer and if he thought his time on the continent was worth what he had to do to get there. Starflight wanted freedom and the continent more than anything. What was he willing to do to gain that? And didn't he sort of think his father and the Nightwings were wrong for their treatment of the Rainwings anyways? "I'll do it," he promised. And together they began to plan. Deathbringer wanted to move quickly, so 4 nights later, after he'd made a quick trip to the Sand Kingdom, they put their plan into motion. Deathbringer snuck into the caves once again, this time with the spear tip needed to free Glory and her little friend Kinkajou. Meanwhile, Starflight, along with Fatespeaker, who he'd insisted on enlisting, went to get the dragonettes free. Fierce Teeth was outside the cave today with their guards. It was Starflight's job to distract her. Luckily, she found him every bit as obnoxious as he found her. He managed to lure her away by arguing with her loudly about who should have really been in the prophecy. Meanwhile, Fatespeaker sidled up to the guards and managed to prick all 3 of them quickly with Rainwing sleeping darts Deathbringer had stolen from the rainforest. She darted into the cave to free the dragonettes. This was the hard part. Unlike the Rainwings, there was only one key to the chains holding the dragonettes, and it hung around Marasir's bulky neck. So instead, Fatespeaker was to free the Mudwing's snout and help him melt the chains. Deathbringer could get them out of the cuffs later when they had the time. Starflight had to keep Fierce Teeth distracted long enough for Fatespeaker to free the dragonettes. Meanwhile, Deathbringer and 2 invisible Rainwings were prepping their way out. Minutes passed. Fierce Teeth was nearly to the point of clawing him in anger, which meant he was running out of time before she flounced away. Then, finally, as Starflight began to panic, thinking he hadn't distracted well enough, Fatespeaker and 3 colorful blurs shot out of the cave, heading for the tunnel to the rainforest. Now, Starflight just had to catch them. Hoping he could pull it off, he spun and pointed in the opposite direction from the tunnel, shouting, "3 moons, is that Marasir?" And like the claw-licker she was, Fierce Teeth spun around to look. Starflight pricked her with the sleeping dart he'd kept curled in his talons while they argued, and then took off, rising into the sky to the first shouts of alarm as Fatespeaker and her escapees were noticed, mere seconds after they'd left. Starflight dove for the tunnel. There were no guards outside. He'd have to hope Deathbringer and Glory had succeeded in taking out the ones waiting inside. Otherwise, he and his friends were about to fly into a very nasty surprise. He made it to the mouth of the tunnel 5 seconds after the dragonettes, landing hard and dashing inside. 5 unconscious Nightwings sprawled on the floor. He caught sight of the blue Sea-Wing kicking one in the tail before she was ushered onward by the little Sandwing. It was the first time Starflight had gotten a good look at her up close. She was small for her age, with bright golden scales and a sweet face. He'd never seen a Sandwing before. He thought they had lighter scales. But he thought her coloring was gorgeous. Like the sun hitting the clouds right at sunset, the only time his miserable home saw any true beauty. "Run!" Deathbringer's voice bellowed from farther ahead, and Starflight shook himself and did so. He could hear thunderous wing beats behind them. They didn't have long. Starflight followed the others through the long tunnel, hard stone scraping his claws. He passed Deathbringer fiddling with a spiky plant thing in what looked like a length of thick string. Deathbringer had said he knew a way to keep the Nightwings from following them long enough for them to escape. This must be it. All thoughts of Deathbringer were momentarily driven from Starflight's mind when he exited the tunnel into the rainforest, though. The assault on his senses was unbelievable, between the smells, sounds, and colors besetting him. Fatespeaker seemed to be having the same experience, looking dazed where she stood, partially shoving the Mudwing out in front of her. "Look later, fly now!" Deathbringer shouted, coming out behind Starflight. He held something in his talons, and as Starflight watched, he blew a tongue of flame on it and let it drop to the stone. "Come on, let's go!" he repeated, shoving Starflight this time. Starflight took off and the others followed, letting Deathbringer take the lead. A few seconds later, a huge explosion rocked the trees, making them sway and stirring up a cloud of birds and chittering monkeys. "What was that?" Fatespeaker gasped in awe. "Dragon flame cacti," Deathbringer said grimly, "and tar on the walls to keep the fire going. Nobody will be walking through there until they put that fire out. That gives us enough head start to find somewhere to hide." Starflight swallowed. He hoped the unconscious guards hadn't been hurt. He didn't want to ask about it. "Why should we hide with you?" the Sea-Wing bit out, though she didn't stop flying. "You're the one who helped capture us." Deathbringer looked guilty again to Starflight. "I didn't have any choice," he said. "I'm trying to make up for it now." "I think we should give him a chance," the Sandwing said. Starflight felt his wings shiver. Her voice was as warm as her scales. Just for now, Chloe said tartly. She looked thin but fierce, with the smaller rainwing sticking close under her wings like a barnacle. We need to get out of the rainforest and then decide what to do. Nobody said anything else, focusing on flying. When more and more time passed without any sign of pursuit, Starflight let out a sigh of relief. It looked like they'd made their escape. Alright, so that turned out really good. Lots of fun action with some Deathbringer focus for good measure, and a hint of alternate universe Sunny Flight thrown in there at the end. I quite enjoyed this one. I had to cut myself off there at the end because the story was pretty exciting, but I didn't want it to be too long. What do y'all think? Would Starflight be brave enough to pull this off? Will he also be brave enough to ask this sweet sandwing dragonette of destiny out on a date? If you enjoyed this video, I have lots of others just like it that you can check out. Also, don't forget to check out the links in the description, including links to my Redbubble, DeviantArt, and of course, my store. Thank you so much for watching, and God bless.